Welcome to the USAR Pay Management Division RLAS DA Form 5960 training. The RLAS DA Form 5960 was implemented in November 2014 to ensure soldiers receive the correct rate of BAHRC when performing 1 to 29-day active duty periods. Since fielding the RLAS DA Form 5960, we have seen a variety of user errors that are resulting in incorrect DA Form 5960s and incorrect BAH payments. This video will help unit administrators process DA Form 5960s accurately so soldiers receive the correct rate of BAH entitlement. This is the outline. We have broken the RLAS DA Form 5960 training into 3 parts. Please make sure you view all 3 videos to receive all the training information. The primary guidance on processing DA Form 5960s in RLAS is in the Reserve Pay Supplemental Guidance. Information on determining entitlement to BAH is in the USAR Pamphlet 37-1 and the Finance Guide for USAR Soldiers. All of these references are available on the USARC G8 Pay Management Division SharePoint site. For this training, we will use the UCPMR to demonstrate BAHRC information. The same information is available on the MMPA report, but the UCPMR is much easier to use. The purpose of the DA Form 5960 is to document the soldier's dependent status. RLAS translates the information you enter on the DA Form 5960 into BAH status and dependent codes that appear on the soldier's pay account, MMPA, and the UCPMR. These codes tell the pay system what rate of BAH to pay the soldier during active duty periods of 1 to 29 days. This is BAH status and dependent information from the Section 1 of the UCPMR. See the USAR PAM 37-1 Appendix I for BAH codes. You must review the UCPMR to ensure each soldier has the correct dependent information for BAH. One way to do this is to compare the dependent information on the DA 5960 validation report from the RLAS personnel module to the codes on the UCPMR. Dependent information in RLAS personnel is usually up to date. If the information in RLAS personnel is correct, but the UCPMR is incorrect, you must process a DA Form 5960. These are the BAH status and dependent codes you will see in Section 1 of the UCPMR. Stat: 0 equals no dependents. 1 equals dependents. DEP, dependent type code. Date, effective date of BAH entitlement. DOB, date of birth of child when the child is the primary dependent. This should be the date of birth of the youngest child. The next slide depicts typical BAH status and dependent codes. This chart lists the BAHRC codes used by the pay system and the BAH rates associated with those codes. You can find these codes in the USAR Pamphlet 37-1, Appendix G and I. As discussed, creating a DA Form 5960 triggers transactions to update the soldier's dependent information in the pay system, eliminating the need to send DA Form 5960s to the USAR Pay Center. You must process all DA Form 5960s in RLAS. This is necessary to ensure RLAS has accurate dependent information. The UPC will not process manual DA Form 5960s submitted by units. Soldiers must certify their dependency status every 3 years on a DA Form 5960 in RLAS. Soldiers with secondary dependents, such as dependent parents or college students over the age of 21, must recertify annually. If the DA Form 5960 certification date is 3 years old or greater, RLAS will not allow you to process pay in any of the Radar's modules. Each RLAS Radars module, the 1 to 29 day, Unit AT, and mobilization modules will prevent users from creating pay for soldiers who do not have an RLAS DA Form 5960. Users will receive an error message advising them of the missing DA Form 5960, prompting them to create the DA Form 5960 in order to create the pay record. The RLAS DA Form 5960 must be signed by the soldier and the commander or alternate certifying officer. Do not pay an active duty order without first obtaining the soldier's signature and dependent documentation and the commander or alternate certifying officer's signature. You must upload the DA Form 5960 and supporting documents to IPERMS, making sure to provide a copy to the soldier for their records. Uploading the certified DA Form 5960 to IPERMS is critical as there is no ability to store the signed DA Form 5960 in RLAS. The DA Form 5960 is a required document in IPERMS and must be retrievable from IPERMS for audit readiness compliance. You must review the soldier's BAH status on the MMPA or UCPMR prior to creating a DA Form 5960 to determine whether the soldier had more than one change in BAH status or dependent type since the DA Form 5960 currently recorded on the soldier's pay record. The DA Form 5960 process in RLAS ensures the dependent information in the RLAS DA Form 5960 and personnel modules match, but cannot identify the need for multiple DA Form 5960s to update DJMS RC. We will discuss why this is important later. When soldiers perform active duty of 30 or more days, the paying finance office must receive a copy of the RLAS DA Form 5960 to ensure they pay the correct rate of BAH. This is an excerpt from the USAR pamphlet 37-1, Appendix C, Table C-2. It identifies Army installations with reserve pay offices. Soldiers performing duty at these locations must provide their orders and RLAS DA Form 5960 to the installation finance office to start their pay. Soldiers who do not provide a DA Form 5960 or whose DA Form 5960 does not match the dependent information on their MMPA will receive BAH at the without dependents rate. In these cases, soldiers with dependents must coordinate with their unit or RPAC to create an RLAS DA Form 5960 to correct the MMPA. Soldiers must provide the new DA Form 5960 to the finance office to correct their BAH payments. For duty at locations not listed in this table, submit the orders and RLAS DA Form 5960 to the UPC. This also applies to 1 to 29 day orders published by HRC. The UPC will not pay BAH to soldiers whose DA Form 5960 does not agree with the BAH information on their MMPA. The UPC will notify the unit to process a new DA Form 5960 in RLAS, and they will start BAH automatically once the unit creates the DA Form 5960 in RLAS. Prior to the RLAS DA Form 5960, almost 1/3 of USAR soldiers received the wrong rate of BAH RC because units failed to send manual DA Form 5960s to the pay center or update the DA Form 5960 validation date in RLAS when soldiers had BAH changes. The ability to create DA Form 5960s in RLAS will in the long term ensure accurate BAH payments for USAR TPU soldiers. In the short term, the large volume of DA Form 5960s created by units for changes in dependency status dating back months or years is causing significant workload for the pay center. The UPC reviews all pay transactions resulting from RLAS DA Form 5960s. In cases where the BAH status pendant type from the RLAS DA Form 5960 does not match the codes currently on the MMPA, the UPC must review the soldier's past BAH payments for over or under payments. These are the current statistics for the DA Form 5960s requiring a review for over or under payments. This large workload will result in delays in retroactive BAH payments for collections for soldiers requiring manual adjustments. This workload is a result of units failing to keep soldier BAH information current prior to the implementation of the DA Form 5960 process in RLAS. You should advise soldiers of the potential for delay. It is critical that the unit administrators review the soldier's BAH codes on the MMPA or UCPMR prior to creating a DA Form 5960. Thank you for viewing Part 1 of 3 of the RLAS DA Form 5960 training. In Part 2 of the training, we will discuss processing DA Form 5960s in chronological order. Please check out Part 2 on our YouTube channel.